YouTube for you guys to watch, so you know, keep it as a general reference for your own work. Okay. Basically, what I'm going to show you here, I'm gonna model something super quick in Rhino, and then we're gonna import it into Cinema4d. This is going to be not like any usual tutorial that we do. It's more like I'm gonna show you, and then I'm gonna try to simulate some of the issues that might come up when doing or when using this workflow. Okay, so let's just say that Neil comes to us with a brief. This brief is to make a project. This project is something like, this is our site, and we need to start making stuff for it. Okay. Now I'm really going to be super random about it because we have no task, no brief. So we say, you know, we are super designers and we are doing everything by ourselves. So I'm just gonna start drawing a random shape. Okay, so this is going to be our building. So one thing that I do if I'm working in 3D, I deactivate the smart truck as always and use the gumball. The gumball, it's a very good tool to extrude, move, and do crazy stuff. So with Alt clicked, I can make very quickly a copy. We talked about it already. With Shift, I'm gonna kind of like squeeze it a little bit. Alt, I'll make another copy. Twist it a little bit longer, and then I'm gonna make a simple loft. Good, so we have our basic shape. This is going to be our building. Okay, let's pretend it's a building. Who cares? Fantastic. So now say that we kind of wanna start to manipulate this a little bit, so we can do this with a cage edit. Oh, the program is in German, so cage edit. We want to use a square. Enter, enter, enter. And say that we take these points and we scale them a little bit in this direction, and maybe move them a little bit as well, so that we create some sort of like dynamic transition. Okay. Now I'm gonna get rid of all the lines because I don't want them, they're irrelevant in this case. So this is my building. Now let's start adding a little bit of details to this. So let's say that we're gonna do, I have no idea in which dimensions we're working, millimeters. Probably to make architecture, millimeters is not the best. Let's go to Tools, Options. We should have the ability to change the units. Let's take a look. Where are they? Einheiten, so units. Say meters in this case. Okay. Oh, I made a mistake. Let's do that again. Meters. Okay, do we want to scale it? No, so this stays the size it is. Let's just take a look, more or less, how. Whoops. How far we are. So the building, it's about 310 meters high, which is great. Okay, we're gonna keep it that way. Now let's start adding some floors. How do we do this? Very quickly, I select this element, and since I'm considering this being like some sort of like a hotel or something, let's do a contour. These are all tools that I've explained to you the last semester. The contour will go in this direction. The distance will be, say, 5 meters. And now we're gonna have all these floors drawn like this. Now one thing that we can do about it is kind of isolate these elements. So now we only have the curves. And one thing that we can do, we can select all these elements and extrude them. Extrude, say 0.5, so to create some sort of like structure to them. Okay, now these curves, they're still selected, so what I'm going to do, I'm gonna say Control G for group, so now they're all in a group, as you can see. And I'm gonna hide them for now because I'm not gonna need them. So let's hide them. I'm gonna select all these elements and I'm gonna say offset surface. In this case, what I can do, I can check the direction of the offset and I can give a distance. In this case, it's 1 meters. It's okay, let's leave it like this, but we want to have a mass, so in German Volumenkörper, a solid, I think it's in English. So let's just click enter and see what happens. It will take a little bit of time because there are 150 elements, but look at this, now we have a structure. If I go and bring back my element inside, now I have a glass facade plus some sort of like a rimming in it. Now one thing that I'm gonna do, I'm gonna hide this again. I'm gonna select all these elements. Let me see if the group is hidden. Great. So I'm gonna select all these elements minus the circle and I'm gonna group them, Control G. So now all these elements, they're together. I am going to call back the did I lose my curves? Let's take a look. Cell curve. There they are. So my curves are here. They're actually grouped together with this body. So I made a mistake because I group everything together. So let's ungroup them. Control Shift G. Now I'm able to only select the curves. And let's start organizing our project. So to organize our project, we go inside the layers and we're gonna start creating a couple of layers. I'm gonna call this layer lines and I'm gonna change the display to something like red. Right click and say change the layer of this object. And now if you take a look, these lines are red. I will do the same for the rimming here. And I'm gonna exclude the these lines. I'm gonna switch them off. And I'm gonna organize this into contours. Another layer. Change this to yellow. Right click, Objektebene, and there you go. So now I have everything into one other layer. Now I'm gonna call back my facade. I'm gonna change these to say glass. Right click and change the color to something like blue. So now we have a building that has glass. It has all these elements of separation, but it still doesn't have any floors. So let's just select my lines that generate the floor. Right click, select object, say extrude. But in this case, we want to have a mass, a Volumenkörper. And we're going to extrude this to 0.5 as well. So now we have floors. You see? If I were to use a clipping plane, say in this direction and turn it like this, you will see that the building now has floors, it has a glass facade, and it has these objects, which are still very representative, but you know, it's good enough for you to have an idea. Let's say that our building is now complete. Why? Because we're lazy and we just want to get it out as soon as possible. Good. So we have our building organized. We have a standard, which a layer which, you know, can be used for, say, creating the surroundings. Actually, let's do create a little bit of surroundings so that we have an idea of what we are dealing with. Let's make maybe some dummy buildings around it. These buildings can be a little bit more articulated. Let's actually scale this up a little bit. Let's copy the buildings at the back. Make some sort of like offset. Maybe, you know what, we'll put also a little street here. Like this. Let's extrude it. Extrude curve minus 0.2. So the extrusion is very small, but you still see it. We make a very big road. We extrude this curve to 0.2. Extrude it that way as well. Maybe copy the other buildings so that we have a little bit of context. Good. So now say that our idea is to make a rendering of this building like this in Cinema4d. So we got everything. I'm gonna rename this from standard to surroundings. My dyslexia here, it's not helping. Great. So now our project is done. We wanna take it over into Cinema4d and render it. Super easy. What do? First of all, it's always good to say file save. So we save this somewhere. Desktop, and we call it test1. And then we save it again, but in this time we save it as a FBX file. Why FBX? In my opinion, the FBX is the one that needs the least negotiation in terms of like mesh, file organization, and so on and so forth. So let's look for it. Motion Builder FBX. Let's call it test again. Save. And it's gonna ask you, do you want the NURBS to be exported as NURBS or polygons? You leave that to polygons. Fung or Lambert, leave it to Fung because we're gonna read a Fung tag. Which kind of export do we want to use? Leave this by default, it's not a problem. Okay. It's gonna ask you how many details do you want. In this case, since we're working with like freeform, I would say the most polygons possible. Okay. Now it's gonna take a little bit of time because eventually this is a very large, not large but like complex geometry. And now what we're gonna do, we're gonna open Cinema, which in our case it's already open, and we're gonna say file. I think this is merge, yes? Yes, I think so. Test1 FBX, open. The default should work, okay. Now, the problem that you're gonna have with this is that probably the sides of the model is going to come out not matching the sides of your viewport, and this is a normal problem. Also, you're gonna see that your project is using a different type of coordinates, and this is due to the fact that basically Rhino and Cinema use two different types of coordinates. It's not a big deal, but we can fix this issue. All we have to do is select all the geometry. Actually, there should be a way also to, let's take a look, centimeters. So if I drop a box of 200 centimeters, yeah, this actually makes sense. Okay. So if we select everything, just by selecting everything, the null point of my selection should be my rotation. Okay? That means I select everything, R for rotation, and all I have to do is rotate my model by 90 degrees. In this case, minus 90 degrees. Okay? Now the problem that you're seeing here with like the geometry being cut off, this is a limitation of the graphic card. It is a limitation of the graphic card because the model is too big for the graphic card to display. Now this is not a very big issue if you have a very powerful computer. One thing that you can do, you can actually scale the model just for rendering purpose for you to be a little bit more versatile. How do we do this? So we know that the design is final, we don't care, we just leave it like this. Select everything, Alt G. We call this, say, 3D. We take this model, we go to Scale, and we scale it down with Shift until it gets to about 10%. Why 10%? Because basically, if we do it like this, it's okay if we're not using the right scale in centimeters. We're just going to render this. It will kind of store the same proportions. Okay. And there we go. So now we have a model that is ready to be rendered. Now let's try and texture this element. So the first thing that we have to do, we need to get rid of all the materials which are actually applied here. Okay? And the easiest way to do this is to go to the 3D model that we have created, take the material that has been carried over, copy it with Control to the father, say right click, and then you can say where is it? Select children. Select children. There we go. So now that we have selected all the same tags, we can simply click delete and we get rid of them. This material we don't need because we have everything in groups. Why is it important to have everything in groups? Because now we can simply go to Shader, V-Ray Advanced Material, and we can create, say, a normal glass. In this case, I don't want you to complicate things, so just deactivate the diffuse layer, click on the specular layer, and you'll have a reflective material, which will also be transparent and will work as glass. It won't be physically correct, but that's okay for the architectural representation. It's not a big deal. Click on close. Look at this. We now have a layer that says glass. We copy this to the layer, and all of a sudden in our element we have a glass material. So call this glass, Now let's do the same thing for the surroundings. The surroundings we are going to make white. As I already mentioned to you, white, when it comes to rendering, it's never really full white, so we'll bring this to something like 80%. We drop this onto the surroundings. The lines in this case, we don't need them, so we can delete them. The contours, we can make them say that our client is Donald Trump, so he might want them out of gold. No, fuck Trump. So we'll make them say, hold on, this we call it surroundings. And the contours, we're gonna make them, let's make them a funky color. What should we make them? Welche Farbe? Was? Was ist... Copper, Entschuldigung, sorry. Okay, yeah. Let's do this. How do we do this? Okay, you should tell me how to do this, because I've already explained it to you last semester. How do we make a copper material? It's very simple. The copper material basically has mainly one physical attribute, which is reflection, right? So, since reflection is for us important, we switch on the specular layer. A metal usually has a Fresnel of about 22. Now, what's important for us to understand is that the diffuse has no roll, so we bring this to black. And the specular layer we turn into something like copper-like, say maybe a little bit more reddish and less saturated, maybe a little bit darker as well. Something like this. But we want to have the reflections to be a little bit blurry, so something like around 80%. Does this look copper-like? And it was basically only 3 clicks, okay? So let's just drop this into the contour. Ooh, one thing that we haven't done was giving the floors a material. We actually gave the contours only the surrounding material. How can we fix this? Look how simple it is. Now, what I have to do is switch off the contours, switch off the glass, and now I'm left only with the surroundings. That means that I can simply select everything here but the floor and hit delete. Now I go back to Rhino. I hide my lines, I hide my contours, I hide my glass. I select only the floors, put the floors into another layer, call it floors. I make this, say, pinkish, right click, change the layers, and now what I can do, I can say select only these, Auswahl exportieren, so export selected, to where is it? Motion blur, motion builder, FBX, floors only. Okay, I want to have the most polygons. And now I say merge, floors only. Oh, where did I save that? Auswahl exportieren, floors only. Okay, made a mistake. Schneiden, desktop, einfügen, abbrechen. Now I say floors only. Open. Okay. So what did we do before? We selected the floors, we rotated them 90 degrees, and we scaled them to 10%. And now everything is in place. If I switch on my layers again, you will see that everything makes sense, right? Now the only thing that I have to do is select again all the tags, get rid of this material, and create another material for the floors. In this case, what do we want to do? We want to do a material, maybe let's say the tower building, it's blue inside, slightly blue, and these are our floors. Drop this on the floors. Boom! My file, it's ready to be rendered. Let's change the display mode to something a little bit more flat. Let's leave it to this. Now what we want is creating a camera as well as a light system and simply render. It's a super easy task to do. So I create a camera, I click here to go inside my camera, and I position this camera at human eye, so 160. Now what I want to do, I want to make sure that my camera is straight, and since the building is huge, I want to go inside my angle and change this to something like, say, 18, so that now I have a better view. Now without moving the camera, I'm gonna offset my lens so that my angle stays the same, that my position stays the same, but I have a much better view over my building. Also, I kind of want to change the ratio of what I'm seeing. So let's do this. Alt V to look for the view. Let's make these only lines, and let's go and change the output to something a little bit more vertical, so say 1000 by 800. So now that I have this proportion, I can simply take my zoom and get closer to the building, and eventually offset my lens a little bit more. So -30, the camera is there, the system is ready. Let's lock my camera using a protection tag, and let's get out of it so that we can drop a sun system. And the sun system, we're gonna have it, say, looking in this direction so that we might get some nice light on the building. So let's create this. We go to endless light. The light is there. Take a look. It looks like this. The only problem is that we don't know in which position this light is pointing at. What can we do? Right click, cinema tag, target, and we drop a null object in this tab, and this null object will be referenced inside as a target for our light. So now the light can be easily placed in the position that we want it to. Let's put it maybe a little bit higher. Let's go back to our camera and let's set V-Ray for render. V-Ray, you set it in really just a few clicks. So we change from standard to V-Ray. In V-Ray we say indirect illumination GI on. The preset that we want to use is the number 2 from Stefan's presets. Now we need a V-Ray tag for the camera and the V-Ray tag for the light. In the V-Ray light, what we want to do, we want to make sure that we have our shadows on. shadow subdivision, in this case I'm gonna turn them to 80, and the photon subdivision to 1000. And in the camera, I'm just gonna adjust the camera so that I have a good exposure for exterior views. So maybe like something like 400 should work. Maybe let's make the sun a little bit softer, changing the size multiplier to something like 10. And let's hit render and see what happens. Can you actually see it? Yeah. It's too dark, huh? Let's make it a little bit lighter. Now, if we want to make a rendering lighter, how do we do this? So we have two possibilities. Either we change the settings of the camera, or we make the sun stronger. In reality, can we make the sun stronger? No. So what do? We change the values of the camera. This is called critical logical thinking. By the way, for all of those who follow my vlog, Chris Pikachu is here. So let's go back to my camera. In lens parameter, we say the film ISO, we put it 200, and the f-stop something like 5. Let's take another test. Beautiful. And this is how you make a rendering using the workflow Rhino to Cinema4d. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording now, so that if you have any questions we can discuss it, and then you can take a little break.